Of course that it's unfair to mention some actors and actresses and say that they were the only good and famous actors in the silent era. Because the silent era was a very dynamic time. There were many famous actors and actresses. So the list of silent films, actors and directors, of course, it's not extensive. It's only meant as an introduction to the work of those actors. But of course, there are many more. You can Google silent film actors, silent film actresses, silent film directors, and then you will see a wide range of professionals of many different countries. But just to give you a reference when it comes to names, I will mention some people in this episode and in the next ones. For instance, to begin with, Mary Pickford, the America's sweetheart. Although she was America's sweetheart, she was originally born in Canada in 1892. And she started working in theater when she was around 5 years old. And then, after some experience with theater, she started working with films in 1909. And she started with the Biography Studios located in New York. Back then, Biography Studios was the studio that where the W. Griffith had started his career. And the W. Griffith started in Biography Studios in the previous year, 1908. So, some of the first films of Mary Pickford were directed by famous cinema director the W. Griffith. Mary Pickford became an instant hit among audiences. She was a very beautiful girl with beautiful curls, a very delicate figure, and a very, very good and skilled actress. However, there was a problem. At that time, and until early 1910s, some American studios, they didn't disclose the name of their actors in the screen credits. Why they did that? Those studios thought that if they disclosed the names of the actors who took part in their films, those actors would be famous, and if those actors became too famous, they could demand higher salaries. But some audience members, they wrote to Biography Studios asking who was that beautiful actress with the curls. And then she became known as the girl with the curls. And she worked in Biography Studios for around 2 or 3 years. And although her name wasn't disclosed in the screen credits, she became a popular actress regardless. Then, after a while, she worked for another studio, and then her name was finally disclosed. And she became very popular in the role of poor and determined girls, of women who were strong-willed, who had a heart of gold, who were virtuous, who were hardworking, and the audiences loved that image of her. And she became a star throughout the 1910s. And she made some very interesting and famous films that are still available nowadays, both online and in DVD. Among them, Tess of the Storm Country, Cinderella, and Daddy Long Legs, among many others. So, there are many cool DVDs about Mary Pickford's work. You can Google that and you will find many, many interesting items. And as some people already know, Mary got married with another very popular actor called Douglas Fairbanks. However, the marriage was kinda controversial in the beginning because both of them were officially still married with other people. Mary Mary's first marriage was with a fellow actor, and she married him around in 1911, and she was already estranged from him. She no longer lived with him. Douglas Fairbanks was married with another woman, and they were already estranged when he met Mary. But there was some kind of fear of them to make their relationship public, and then the audience perhaps reject them somehow. But after dating for some years, they got officially married in 1920. And then it happened what no one could expect. The audience, instead of rejecting Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford's marriage, it actually made them become more popular than ever. So the fans got really happy to know that their two favorite actors got married in real life. And their popularity, which was already big, became even bigger. And it's famous that Douglas and Mary, they had their honeymoon in Europe, and in every country they went, there were many fans who wanted an autograph, who wanted to see them, and reportedly they didn't even have time to be alone, because there were crowds and crowds of fans wherever they went. And it's something very interesting to see. And they remained popular throughout the 1920s, to the point that their mansion, the Pickford, which was the name of their house, became a very, very popular venue in Hollywood throughout the 1920s. Many people gathered together there. Famous Hollywood actors, politicians, and even royalty. So the couple was so popular that they were kind of informal ambassadors of pop culture for foreign dignitaries, foreign actors, foreign businessmen who attended their parties, who attended their house. And Pickford became a very, very famous house, a famous mansion of their own. And they remained popular until the end of the silent era. And both Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, they remained active in the beginning of the talkie era. However, Mary wanted to have different sorts of roles because audiences loved to see her playing the role of the poor girl who had a heart of gold, who was virtuous. But time was passing. Mary was no longer so young, and she wanted to have a wider range of roles. But the audiences just liked to see her with her usual roles. And it's interesting to see that Mary was so popular that her long hair with beautiful curls, they were famous on their own. And when she finally bobbed her hair in 1928, it became such a huge event that this fact ended up in the newspapers of the time. So there was her picture in the newspapers, bobbing her hair in the newspapers, sometimes in the front page. So this shows how popular Mary was. And Douglas Fairbanks was equally popular. He became a star with his 1920s swashbuckling films, and like The Iron Mask, The Teeth of Baghdad, which were usually very well produced films with beautiful special effects. And Douglas Fairbanks was also a very athletic actor, and he had lots of physical skills. He did his own stunts, and it was very interesting to see. Both Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, they made some films in the beginning of the talk era, but then they retired in the early 1930s. And in 1936, the couple divorced. I think the Douglas Fairbanks had an affair, and then he filed for divorce. And when it comes to Mary, she had a very tough decade in the 1930s. First of all, in 1928, she lost her mother, and Mary was very close to her mother. Her brother, Jack Pickford, who was also an actor, she passed away, and her sister, Lottie Pickford, has passed away in the 1930s too. And then in 1936, she divorced from Fairbanks. So it was a very, very tough time for her when it comes to her personal life. So she retired, and in the end of the 1930s, she married a fellow actor, Buddy Rogers, and they remained together until she passed away. And after her retirement, Mary became very reclusive for the rest of her life. And finally, in 1939, Douglas Fairbanks passed away suddenly, which was another blow for Mary. And in real life, Douglas Fairbanks was the best friend of Charlie Chaplin, who back then was already a star on his own right. But all in all, both Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, they were not exactly the first stars of Hollywood. There were others before then. But when it comes to superstardom, to be famous worldwide, both Mary and Doug was the nickname of Douglas Fairbanks. They were so famous that in the Soviet Union, in 1927, they made a film called A Kiss for Mary Pickford. And they were famous even in Japan. So when it comes to superstardom, they were definitely the first superstars of Hollywood. Another interesting fact is that in First World War, in 1917, 1918, both Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, even before they got married in real life, they were involved in selling war bonds to help the American war effort. And they made speeches and they helped to sell those war bonds. And their popularity helped a lot to sell lots of war bonds, which eventually helped the American war effort in World War I. So this is another witness of their popularity. Another wonderful actress who was very famous in the late silent era was Clara Bow. Clara Bow was born in New York in 1905 into extreme poverty. She was the only surviving kid of a couple. Her mother had schizophrenia, and her father was very abusive towards his family. And Clara had a very difficult life, especially with her mother. She reportedly tried to kill Clara in her sleep when Clara showed some wish to become an actress. And in the long run, her mother got institutionalized. And even with all those difficulties, against all odds, Clara ended up being in films. And she became famous after a short time. Clara Bow became the personification of the flapper in the 1920s. She got famous especially in the end of this decade in films like It, which was made in 1927, among others. And she was a very bright and energetic and happy personality, and we could see this in her acting too. And she was very, very, very famous and had many fans. However, throughout the 1920s, she was very exploited by her studios. Her life was never easy, not even after she got famous. And there were many rumors about her in the media, especially because she came from the poverty. So some people thought that she didn't have the polish that they thought she was supposed to have. However, almost everyone who were around Clara said that she had a wonderful personality, that she was unaffected, that she trusted everyone, that she was extremely friendly, extremely talkative, and a person with a very, very, very good heart. Another problem for Clara was her father, because when Clara moved to Hollywood and became famous, her father followed her, and her father was an womanizer and was involved in many scandals, and it ended up being a problem to Clara. However, she remained popular. And when there was the transition of the silent era to the talkies, Clara didn't have any problem with her voice. Her voice was fine. She had a beautiful singing voice. However, she was extremely overworked. She was exploited, and Paramount, which was her studio at the time, didn't give her any time to adjust to the new media of the talking films. And whenever Clara was supposed to speak on the screen, she got very nervous, although she had no problem with her voice or with her acting. And she got a little bit disheartened with the new media, with the new technology. She didn't have any support. Comparatively, MGM invested a lot in Greta Garbo. They provided her with English classes, with speech classes, and they gave her some time to adjust to the new media, some time to rest. And unfortunately, Clara didn't have that from her studio. So she made some talkie films, and in early 1930s, she retired. She married a fellow actor who later became a politician, and she left the screen, and she had 2 sons. And she had a relatively happy marriage. However, later in life, around the end of the 1930s, beginning of the 1940s, she had some symptoms of psychiatric disease herself. And she underwent some treatments, and she had her IQ measured. She spent some time in institutions, but she didn't stay there. And she became very, very reclusive, and at some point she got estranged from her husband, and she lived alone for the rest of her life. It is claimed that she was happy, that she was alone, but it was her choice to be reclusive, and she started to paint and to engage in her hobbies. And Clara passed away very, very young, at only 60 years old, in 1965. And it's very interesting that Clara's films are very appreciated even nowadays, because she had such natural acting and she had such vibrant talent that it's easy to relate with her, even though her films are so old. So, and there are plenty of interesting biographies about Clara Bow's life. And it's interesting not only as a good actress, which she really was, but her life is very interesting when it comes to resilience. She was a very strong and resilient person who had lots of difficulties throughout her life, who got to overcome an unhappy, very poor childhood and teens and became a star. She had to overcome gossip, she had to overcome prejudices, she had to overcome mental disease, but she found her way to be happy in life, to keep her good personality, to keep her talents, to disclose her talents to the world. I will talk about Clara Bow's biographies in other episodes, but it's really, really an actress that everyone should know, not only because of cinema or because of acting. Her story is really, really, really inspiring, regardless of era. So you can start Googling her name, and there are many things written about her online, about her films, about her career. Her most famous films are nearly all of them are available in DVD or online. She just has some films that were lost, but they aren't many. So it's highly recommended, and you will not regret knowing this wonderful girl who remains to be loved even nowadays.